There you go. All right. After morning. I know it's after a break and everybody's ready to go, but it is Friday and it's beautiful outside. But I'm just worried for at least another hour and a half to 3 hours. So, all right. Marv said that he couldn't remember my qualifications, so I will give you my qualifications. I am a journeyman pipe fitter. I hold a mechanical license, a plumbing license. I am a state code official fire plans reviewer. I hold a inspector 2 and plans reviewer with NFPA and with the ICC. I also have a degree in heating and cooling from Ferris State Go Bulldogs. Okay, so.
Are you a nice set?
Am I a nice set? Nope, but I'm going to start working on that.
Okay.
I have 26 years with the fire department in Grand Rapids. Before that, I worked for Howard Eisinger. Anybody remember that company? And before that, I worked for Quality Train before they became Quality Air. That was a while ago. So I've been in the field for literally my whole life. So anyway, 26 years experience as a fire hazard inspector for the city of Grand Rapids. Before that, I worked for the water department. I am going to be retiring in 1 year, 11 months. So will Mr. Griffey. So, back to this. Okay, we're going to talk about today is sprinkler systems, 13D most specifically, the multi-purpose 13D system. Let me get that up here because they come with a lot of props. This is what a 13D multi-system basically looks like. I will explain it more in depth. I've made this up 15 years ago or more with the assistance of Scott Deckrow, when we had 2 of these systems approved for use in a Habitat for Humanity house, one of which was for a disabled veteran, where we suppressed the entire house for him for no cost. All right. Thank you. Everybody here familiar with fire? Yep, you're familiar with how fast the fire moves. I brought a little video along. I'm gonna mute that. We're gonna talk through this. This is a side-by-side burn. I've done multiple of them. We set up a living room with stuff that we get from Goodwill. Whoever wants to donate us real stuff. We set a fire. You can see that the smoke alarm has just activated at 20 seconds. One side has a sprinkler head, which that side's now done. The other side, the fire department hasn't been called yet. It takes on average for a fire department to arrive at a structure fire, within 5 to 7 minutes in Grand Rapids. If you're in a rural area where it's volunteer, you can double or triple that time. And that's just them arriving on the scene. They haven't even put any water on it. As you see right now, that side right there is getting to a point where it's going to reach flashover. Flashover is where the ceiling temperature is 1100 to 1600 degrees. Everything in the room spontaneously ignites with fire because it's so hot. You'll see that black cloud turn red here in a few seconds. That's when flashover occurs. At that point, it's an untenable space. Nobody in that space will survive. Also, that thick black toxic cloud of arsenic, cyanide, and carbon monoxide has traveled throughout the entire house. Most fires happen between 10 at night and 5 in the morning. What are you usually doing then, unless you're a teenager? Partying. Okay. The house on, well, as I'm facing it, the one on the left, which is still burning, now the fire department puts the water on it, you will be out of that house for about 6 months to a year if they can rebuild it. The one on the other side, you'll be back in after Serve Pro or whoever you have come in and suck up all the water. Okay, sprinklers work. They work every time if they're properly installed and properly maintained. So we can quit with that and move on to the real stuff. Okay, every 82 seconds a fire occurs in the United States. Like I said, most people die from the smoke inhalation and arsenic cyanide and carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide makes your heart rate go up, which means you suck in that carbon monoxide faster, the arsenic faster, and all of the rest of the byproducts. If everything in our house is made from some form of oil, fires are burning faster now. The legacy equipment or legacy furniture of wools and cottons burn slower. House fires are faster and hotter in today's world. Most fires occur in the living room, bedrooms. A lot of them are electrical, some are, well, we still got a large quantity of unattended smoking. Somebody fell asleep or put the ashtray too close to something and it caught fire. But most of them right now are kitchen fires from unattended cooking and largely based around one of these. They got to playing on Twitter and try what they were doing. Okay? And I got more evidence of that as we go through here. So we're going to get into sprinkler basics and talk about things, the differences between NFPA and 13. 13 is for commercial structures, like this building.
Don't look up.
I know. Let me talk about this building. And this is how I usually start out because I am a safety person, and we all are. We all save lives no matter what trade you're inspecting. That is one of the first lines in your code if you read the administration section. It's about life safety and prevention of hazards. Okay, so with that being said, this is not fully alarmed and not fully sprinkled building. However, if there's an emergency, there's exits on the back wall, on the side wall. Both of them lead to active and functioning exits that will take you to the outside of the building. Proceed with caution and calmly relieve the space. Okay, so back to this. Okay, 13 systems are designed to contain the fire until the fire department arrives. That is their main function, that is their main purpose, and the reason that they're designed that way is because they're for commercial buildings which have a lot of stuff stored in them. Okay, the difference between the two, as we'll get into it, they both prevent flash over, which we already talked about that. That's an intendable space. We want to keep the heat and temperature down and knock down the products of combustion to make the area more survivable for everybody. All right, more differences between the two. Commercial, we have 25 to 35 gallons a minute. Sprinkler heads are located everywhere, literally everywhere, basement, attic, concealed spaces if it's made out of combustible material, under rack storage if it's of a set height and what commodities. There's a whole lot of stuff that you got to go through, but we're not talking about commercial. We're going to talk about more residential stuff. FDC, fire department connections are required, and a 200-pound pressure test is required. All right, 13 is up to 4 units, or sorry, 13R is up to 4 units or 4 stories in height, 2 units or more. So a duplex can have a 13D system in it, but a 3 unit has to have a 13R system in it. There are some minor, mostly, changes and differences between the two, and we're going to get more into that. 13Ds are designed for 1 and 2 families. Here it is. You can see here, 13R and 13D, you don't have to suppress closets, crawl spaces, and attics. In most cases, there are some exceptions, and we'll cover that. 13R systems are designed for 4 to 6 heads to be activated at the same time. That is important when you're looking at water flow calculations. A 13D system is 1 to 2 sprinkler heads. So when you're looking at the plan, you have to make sure that the design area is capable of being suppressed with 2 heads. There is no, let's back, hit the wrong button. There is no fire department connection required on a 13D system. There is on a 13R system. That's just where the fire department comes up and supplements the water supply that should be there. And both of them are designed for life safety to get the people out of the building. Now let's talk about how the sprinklers work, because there are definitely different sprinkler heads for commercial as opposed to residential. You can see the pattern is different on these two. This is why. In this one, which is for commercial, we want to wet the floor space. That's where the boxes are being stored, the pallets are, all of their products are being stored. We want to get that wet, contain that fire, and keep it from spreading. This one here, we want to hit high on the ceiling or high on the wall, 30 inches down. That way we're knocking down that products of combustion, the arsenic, cyanide, and carbon monoxide, allowing the residents time to escape. Okay, that's the big difference between the two. Now, I told you I had some proof that they actually work. If you're ever in Grand Rapids, this is right at the corner of 131 and 196. This was right down the road from it. Why are they both on here? Because the very same week they both had a kitchen fire. This one here, the people in it just got back from a night of partying.
That's Joe's house.
And they decided to take a nap while they were cooking. Okay, well, that took out the kitchen and all of the 8 apartments had to be evacuated. On the 23rd floor of this building, a person was occupied with their phone, forgot about the pan on the stove. The fire ensued, one sprinkler head extinguished it. This is what the buildings look like today. Okay? And this one, although irritated, all of the residents were back in within an hour. That one, they found somewhere else to live. Now, on a personal note, if you're inspecting, and I know you guys are inspectors and you do a quality job, always keep your eyes open because what you do is important. And I just had this one touch very close to home. Last week, Wednesday, in Benton Township, there was a dryer fire in an adult assisted living care, acute care they call it. The sprinklers in the dryer laundry area extinguished the fire. All of the life safety systems, the fire doors closed, the fire alarm worked, all of the residents were evacuated and were back in within an hour. How do I know all this? Because that's where my mom was. Okay? She was there trying to relearn to use her legs after cancer surgery. So it's important. Okay, water damage. This is how many, on average, gallons of water are produced by a sprinkler head before somebody shuts the valve off because the sprinkler has extinguished the fire or the fire department got there and put it out the rest of the way. See the big difference? That's 2 to 3, 2.5 inch hoses spraying on that fire to try and contain it to just that house. Keeping the house next door from igniting, keeping the garage from igniting, keeping it from spreading to some other areas. So there's a huge difference in water usage. So if anyone says that sprinklers aren't green, they are. They're protecting our environment. Okay, enough of politics. Okay, suppression systems. I'm assuming you all have systems like this in your area, right? No. Okay. Most people don't. No fire pumps, nothing like that. That's actually a sidewall sprinkler. It looks kind of funky, but we'll get into that. Before we get into that, we got to make sure we have a water supply that is adequate and proper and clean. And the reason I say that is because NFPA 24 on all sprinkler systems, D, R, and 13 regular, require a flush of the underground. And why do they require a flush of the underground? And that document to be filled out? Because you need to make sure that there's nothing in there that's going to get into the sprinkler system. Because even a pebble will block a 1/2 inch orifice on the sprinkler head. Everybody familiar with this? It's a flange nut, flange bolt for that underground piping. Why do I have this here? Because this actual nut I recovered from a dry suppression system in an attic. Okay, this was a 4-story building with a dry suppression in the attic space, and a dry suppression for the parking underneath. I was downstairs in the sprinkler riser room when they activated the inspector's test, which is at the far end of the dry system, and all I heard was bang, 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 bang. Like, what the? And I didn't even get a chance to get the rest of those words out when the building inspector, electrical inspector, and general contractor were calling me saying, "Did you hear all that?" This went all the way through the system. Now, there was 2 dry systems in this particular apartment complex. The other one, when we opened up the valve, because I wasn't going to let it flow through the system, I got mud out. Okay, it must be clear. How do you do that? It's really simple. Oops, it's over here. Boom. Okay, you have them hook up to the riser. Whatever the flow rate is in NFPA 24, it's about that thick. It'll take you all of the same amount of time it takes you to go to the bathroom to read it. It's really simple. There's a form in there and a chart in there to tell you how many gallons per minute it should flow, and that is based on the sprinkler system itself. Okay, they hook up the hoses, they run it out, they put a hose monster on there with a burlap bag so they can catch it all the debris so we know what's in there. And then they flow water. You'll see this mud coming in this direction. Once the water clears there, you start timing 5 minutes at that flow. What that does is it turbulates all the water in the pipe and kicks up all the debris and moves it along so that when the system activates at its full flow capacity, it won't kick up any more debris and blockheads. Everybody familiar with NFPA 24? Good. Really simple thing. Other things, most systems, not all, 13D multi-purpose does not require backflow or an RPC in this case. But you will have standalone 13D systems with Blaze Master, which will have an RPC. They must be tested before you approve the system on the final. I say that because I've had a few systems where there was debris caught in one of these big boys, and I couldn't get enough flow to even activate one sprinkler head on the flow switch. That's a major problem. Okay, so get that certification. You guys are all familiar with that. Yeah, we're going to talk about water supply and the 13D system. You must have water supply, adequate water supply. We just talked about flushing that. You're going to make sure even on the well systems that they flush that out. Then you have to have 10 minutes of water supply unless it's a 1-story and less than 2,000 square feet. And you can do it with storage tanks. If you have a pump system, you can have a storage tank, a pressure tank. It has to be designed for the maximum required flow, which is for 10 minutes, one sprinkler head, which this design is 2. One sprinkler head is 13 gallons a minute. 13 times 2 is 26. So 10 minutes, 260 gallons. Okay? So you can do it with a storage system, the reliable piping system. The pump has to meet the test to meet the demand for the sprinkler system if you have a pump system. Okay, manufactured homes have to have this hydraulic sticker on there saying how that system was designed and where the pressure data lies. Yes, sir?
13D system, the pump does not have to be UL listed.
Correct. It does not, okay, I'll answer that. I'll repeat the question. On a 13D system, the pump does not have to be UL listed for fire service. It does not. It has to be listed for domestic service, but it has to meet the demand requirements of the system. Okay? So, if you have a duplex, 26 gallons, that's 2 heads. You can combine them, but you have to add a fudge factor of 5 gallons a minute, which means your minimum supply has to be 31 gallons a minute. Okay? That's pretty simple. When you get in the house, if you have a softener system, you have to have a bypass so that if the main flow, if the sprinklers start activating, it will bypass this entire system through that pressure valve.
Right.
Yes, sir.
On a residential system, on a well, does they have to have a generator to keep the pump running?
It does not. It has to have enough storage for that in the pressure tank. That's how you get around that. Can you put a generator on it? Oh, you can.
But a storage tank that has a pump has to have a generator, correct?
No.
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 There's verbiage that talks about reliable power.
It has to have reliable power. So here's where the problem comes in, and it's a big rub for me. So that's why I'm smiling. Consumers Energy, where we are, I don't know about y'all, but they determine themselves as reliable. Well, in my thought, when a fire happens, where does it start? You know, if it's an electrical fire, is that reliable? But, like I said earlier about the battery thing, the code is the maximum we can enforce with the minimum standards. Okay, I have to bite that one on residential, on the single families. On the big ones, oh dude, I pushed that hard on generator. That's a non-negotiable to me. Even on smoke evac and stair pressurization fans, it must be tied into the generator. I'm diverting into other things, but I do a lot of instructing, and there's other things that come into the emergency generator that get me kind of wound up. Okay, any other questions on that? Sorry, didn't mean to move so fast. Yes, sir.
So going back to the duplex, you showed 26 gallons on each side. But you only have to satisfy one 26-gallon unit plus 5 gallons?
Correct. You only have to satisfy one of the duplexes because statistically, only one side's gonna have the fire
At one time.
at one time. So could have been a block party and everybody's drunk and cooking at the same time. Okay, we can't mandate for the worst case scenario, but we can definitely look at it. So just for food for thought, generally one sprinkler head will put out a fire quickly. Okay, we just had a fire 3 weeks ago in Grand Rapids. One sprinkler head put it out within a minute. And it was a grease fire on the stove. Okay, so that would only be 13 gallons, and the guy next door could have a fire too. Not that I'm recommending that, by the way. Okay, back to this. So if you have a system, you must have a warning placard on there on your shutoff valve, because you are required to have a shutoff valve for the system if it's a multi-purpose. Just like everything else, you have a main water shutoff, right? So that's the only shutoff that you can have on a multi-purpose system. On an independent system where it comes off of your main water supply, you'll have its own shutoff valve, you know, an RPZ, another valve on the outside, and all of that requirements.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So if you're on city water
On city water,
and you have a 13D system.
Yep.
And you're running a little water through that 13D system.
Yep.
Like into a toilet.
Yep.
Okay. You wouldn't need an RPZ,
not if it's a multi-purpose 13D system.
multi-purpose.
Multi-purpose, standalone, that's stagnant water.
Yeah, okay, yep. A check valve of some kind would be required?
I believe it's still an RPZ, but I haven't checked.
Because we just did a project in Rochester Hills where they had, these are all ranches on a slab.
Yep.
And they were required to have fire suppression because the fire department wasn't happy with the layout of the land.
I don't know if I can hear you.
Lay of the land, so they ended up having, the fire department required fire suppression. Well, they ended up putting a check valve in every unit. They had one large 2-inch water main coming into a central closet, and then there'd be anywhere from 4 to 6 units on that water service. And every unit had a water unit, or from the water main, the 2-inch, 1-inch went to every unit.
Right.
And there was a check valve, there was a split in the system. Part of it went domestic, some of it went fire suppression.
Okay, so that'd be a double check.
The double, well, there was only one check on the fire suppression system at every unit, just to check those.
Okay, I think, well, let me answer that.
It was a blaze system.
Right. In the city of Grand Rapids, which I've been working forever, they require a double check. I think that's, do we have any Grand Rapids inspectors here still? I believe that's still the requirement, a double check, not a single check, because all of our single checks on 13 systems now have to have a double check or just a double check on them.
Even a 13D.
Even a 13D. If it's independent, if it's a separate system.
But once again, it was independent, but water ran through it all the time because there was a toilet tied into that, a water source, so that that one toilet would be flushed daily.
That sounds like a hybrid multi-purpose.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get into the multi-purpose here, you'll understand a little bit better by that. So, okay, back to 13D, because it's been stripped down, you don't have to have a flow switch or a test. On a 13R, you have to. If it's a standalone 13D, you have to have a test and drain and a gauge. Also, if you have a pump system, you have to have a gauge on the system. So that way we know that it's up to pressure and the owner knows it's up to pressure. Okay, no fire department connection is required on a 13D system. I've already said that a couple times, but here's the nuts and bolts of it. 4 to 6 sprinkler heads on a 13R system. So that means you can cover this whole area as your design area. When you get into the 13D, you can only have 2 sprinkler heads in the same area. That means you have to put a lintel in here, a minimum of 8 inches. And the code lets you do pretty much anything with it, other than cardboard. You can do that with plexiglass, you can do it with drywall, you can do it with Luan, none of which I approve of. A bulkhead looks better. And then the doors come into play because common sense would say they should be shut. But that's just your design area. So you're limiting this area to the 2 sprinkler heads, that's your maximum design area for flow. Okay, we're gonna talk about a couple different systems. We have the typical main and branch system. And in the water service, you should be familiar with the grid system. That's a great way to get more flow out of smaller pipe. And then we have a loop system, which is another suppression system that started out before the multi-purpose. The multi-purpose is basically a loop system with a loop in the attic and a loop in the basement. They have to be interconnected in 2 different points so that it is now a grid system and a loop. So that takes your flow characteristics and reduces them down greatly, but you still get great flow out of it. Okay? On the multi-purpose system, well, let's start with this. This is a standalone system. It goes back to its own RPZ, single check, whichever it is, and it comes off your domestic water. This is the loop system, okay? And this will feed your cold water, just like this. The loop drops down, feeds your lab, feeds your water closet, feeds clothes washer, dishwasher, well, not the dishwasher, you want hot water for that. Okay, and then it's interconnected between the 2 loops. And I know questions are gonna come up about it being in the attic space. I got that covered. All right, this is what the loop looks like. All right, goes around, and sprinkler head, sprinkler head, sprinkler head, drops down. The system in the loop itself must be of braided fittings. These are the only ones that are allowed in your loop of the system. This one here, you can attach a sprinkler head directly to it. If you drop out, they make T's, you can drop down with it, just like you see in the picture. Right there. But when you come down, you can run your manifold in PTFD or whatever it is the product is nowadays. And those fittings, anything below the loop is considered domestic water. All right? So as you're looking at your plan view, you can see where it's dropping down to feed your fixtures, sprinkler head, sprinkler head, sprinkler head, and you can't really tell, but that right there is a connection between the upper loop, and over here, there's another connection between the upper loop and the bottom loop. That gets that grid system, so the water's always flowing in it somewhere, so there's nothing getting stagnant. But it's taking off any, oh, side note, both loops have to attach to at least 1 fixture. So if your attic loop, you only attach to the toilet, okay. Bottom loop is attached to all the rest of the fixtures, that's fine. But you have to have at least 1 fixture off of each loop.
We call multi-purpose.
Call it a multi-purpose. All right, so Uponor is the manufacturer. Scott Deckrow helped me get that system going for the veteran. So they don't distribute for the sprinkler system anymore, but if you're going to have a multi-purpose system in your jurisdiction, Uponor will do the engineering. It costs, well, it used to cost $500. I don't know what it costs anymore because it's been quite a while since I've had that done. Another advantage to the multi-purpose system with this Class A PEX is if you're retrofitting a house, the runs in the wall to connect the inner and upper loop, you do not have to secure. They got some special approval for that. Kudos for them. Seeing how we're talking about the piping, everyone is familiar with Class A PEX. I wasn't familiar with it until I met up with the Uponor rep and Scott Deckrow, and I learned quite a lot about it. It was an awesome product. This is actually the piece he gave me because I had the question about freezing. We'll talk about that in a little bit because that was kind of a fun experiment because I forgot about it. All right, the sprinkler heads have to be attached to the brass fittings, they have to be rated for the room and the exposure in the room. Your securing of the pipe is basically the same as all your PEX requirements, 32 and 48. But when you're running the loop in the attic space, there's multiple ways to run it in the attic space. You can run it below with furring. You can run it above and make sure that there's enough insulation above it to make sure that there's an R25 above it. That's not a preferred way to do it. This is more of a preferred way to do it. You tent over it. What does that look like? Just like this. All right, that allows the heat from this area to go through the drywall and keep that pipe warm. That's what we're trying to achieve, 45 degrees of that pipe. If you put insulation around it, it doesn't get the heat. I've had multiple systems where they had to strap some plastic over it or the mesh netting over the top of the piping just to make sure that it was exposed to the drywall below so that the heat could rise up. Yes, sir.
Foam insulation, spray foam.
Oh.
Don't
Don't get it on my pipe. There's a lot of things that are not allowed to be touching the Blaze Master, the orange pipe, and the Uponor products. And foam, there is one foam that I have been informed is acceptable, but most of them not at all. But that's also where it comes into a problem. If they're gonna spray foam the upper side of the ceiling deck, they must tent over the pipe before they do that. And, oh wait, there's a system for that too. They build a little bulkhead inside there and drywall it over. Or they can lay plywood on top of it. It just creates a space to protect it from that foam and from the insulation so that it doesn't insulate the pipe and let it freeze.
Why is the foam a problem?
Why is the foam a problem? Because it reacts to the chemicals in the pipe.
And it needs all
Petroleum based.
Yeah, it's petroleum based and it eats through the pipe. And I used to have a sample of Blaze Master where, and this is, okay, let me explain this part. We're all in this job together, right? So we work together with building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical. We all work together to look at the building and make sure it's safe. So when you see something, say something. Electrical Romex wire on Blaze Master will eat a hole in it. And that is clear on the side of the pipe. We'll get to that too. Okay, I threw this one in because this was just a commercial job. But it does make a good point. This is a parking structure underneath 3 stories of apartments. You can see the sprinkler heads dropping down, dry pendants. This is where he ran his main. Do you think there might be a problem with freezing? I had him raise the pipe up so that they could insulate underneath it, and then they put this unit heater in to keep the space in that area at 45 degrees. We also have them monitoring the temperature because that's a code requirement also. But I want you to notice something. That's a unit heater. That's an upright sprinkler head for this interstitial space. But wait, there's a code for that. In your 13, it tells you how far you have to be at what temperature away from a unit heater, face or side. I throw that out because when you see it, say something because a lot of times they gotta be high temperature or ultra high temperature depending on how close they are. Otherwise you get pre-discharge. And that just ruins everybody's day. Yes, sir.
On that building, because of 3 stories above it and parking garage below, 3 stories above, the top 3 floors or possible 4 floors are 13R, correct? And the lower level is always 13 in the parking garage in those situations. All right,
Correct.
just verify.
The lower level is considered an S use. All S uses have to be suppressed under 13, not 13R. You can have a mixed system, but that floor ceiling assembly is also rated for 2 hours.
But you can go 4 floors above.
You can go 4 floors above still, yes. But then it's required to be a 13 system after that. New code change, 21. Just found that out. Also, parking structures. Oh, back to the electric battery thing, just for everybody's information. In the 21 code, open parking structures must be suppressed now. And I want you to understand this one. It has to be an automatic dry system. Not sure what that is, but there's a specialty valve for that. Okay, and and it spells it out in the commentary specifically because of the electric car problem. Okay, piping. We talked about Uponor, we're gonna talk about Blaze Master. You'll see some steel piping. Steel piping is required in storage areas, except for in our 13R system. Yes, sir?
So, as a firefighter, how long would that garage have to be suppressed with dry? To put out that fire or just contain that?
As you're talking residential or that one underneath there?
The parking garage.
The parking garage there, that was designed
If
for.
you had a battery.
Okay, put the wet stuff on the red stuff and keep it going. That system underneath that building was designed for 8 to 10 heads to be activated at the same time to contain the fire. Remember, 13 is only to contain the fire. Will it put it out? Not on a lithium car. And that's what really bites about lithium, you know, so.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, Blaze Master is this product here. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but it comes in a bag, and then when you open up the bag, it looks like spaghetti and goes everywhere. Because sometimes when it's formed, it doesn't form straight. And I say that because if you see this going on, manufacturer says that's perfectly acceptable. There is, and I encourage everybody each manufacturer has a suggested installation instructions, and it'll tell you how much deflection you can have on them pipes. Because they can actually deflect the pipe on purpose to reach a set space for their sprinkler spacing. It also tells you how it should be glued, for which I'm gonna cover some of that too, because I've seen a lot of things. Okay? That wire right there had to be moved. That's a combustible jacket that will eat away my pipe. All right, so hang in the pipe. Plastic pipe is very specific for its suppression purposes. You must have a auto grip on some and a surge clip. This is what a surge clip looks like. And then always look at the drawing to see what the recommendation spacing is, because it depends on the size pipe as to how far away from the sprinkler drop that it must be, because when the sprinkler head activates, there's thrust. We're trying to stop that thrust. So they only get 1/8 of an inch movement on a sprinkler head. And some of you were wondering why I was walking around with a stick. It's not for corrective action. It is actually because I'm short. I will actually, and that's why it's got a rubber tip on it. Reach up and push on the sprinkler heads, every one of them. I like to sleep at night. I like to make sure the system is correct. Okay? I also am lazy, so I put measurements on here so that I know what a combustible steel space measurement is, 6 inches. Or 4 inches down for a smoke detector. It's a multi-tool. It also works good for when the contractors get lippy. All right, so not gonna get into the minutiae of that too much, but there are specialty clamps that you can use on Blaze Master. Okay, they're all different types. They should be listed on the plan as to how they should be secured. They must be secured. Every sprinkler drop must have less than 1/8 of an inch of movement. And this is a 13 system requirement. If you have an inspection on a 13 system with a pump, every hanger must have surge suppression on it. Because once the pump kicks in, it pumps up the pipe and it makes it move. Yes, sir.
On your drawing here, if that's CPVC on the top 3, is that threaded rod supposed to come down to within 1/16 of an inch on all manufacturers?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I said get the manufacturer's information book, because 1/8 of an inch without a surge clip is acceptable. But here's what they all say, at least the last time I read them, that threaded rod can come down within 1/16 of an inch of the pipe, but it must be deburred. Are you gonna climb up there and check them all? Seismic movement of the building will wear a hole in that pipe. Surge clips are a whole lot quicker and easier. They just put them on, clip right in there, and life is good. Okay, that's that specialty hanger that I just showed you. It's great for stubbing off for a sidewall. All right, this is what they look like when they're properly installed. You can see there's a surge clip right there. Those are properly anchored to the structural member. That's the surge clip. See how nice and close that is? This one here it has a surge clip on it. It's also about an 1/8 inch down. You cannot hang through ductwork. You cannot run your sprinkler pipe through ductwork. Have I seen it? Oh, yeah, we've seen it. Yeah. And when you can trapeze off of the sprinkler pipe. But when they do it, make sure they do it right. That auto grip nut is definitely upside down. And as the building moves and shakes, it's gonna fall off. This is where your eyes are important. I carry that stick with me, and I carry a very good flashlight. I don't like to get up on ladders. I will do it if I have to. I'm not afraid of heights. It's just a pain in the butt to carry it around the job site. Okay, when you're looking for it, walk all of the pipe because you never know what happened. You see, that's the auto grip right there, hanger. They took it off and put a pipe in there so that it wasn't dangling down. I'm not 100% sure why they did that. This one here, that's the threaded rod. The ceiling grid they changed the height of the ceiling. So when they put the ceiling grid in, he just shoved all the pipe up, and that's why we got a nice bend to it. Mechanical guy, took down my hanger. It happens. All right, this one I throw in here because when you get a plan, a set plan, the piping is designed for the flow of the system. And as we all know, 190 adds 15 feet of pipe for friction. This plan, when it was submitted, the sprinkler line was going straight down the hallway. I think it was 102 feet of run. Doesn't sound like much, but it was a big hotel. Anyway, they were late to the party. So they had to work around everybody. So you see, oops, wrong button, come on. There we go. You can see you had to drop down and come back up. This is all on the same floor. And this is a 12-story building that every floor but the first two are the same like this. So I had to have new hydraulic calculations to make sure that we had enough flow. Yes, you can require that because you are the end gap for making sure everybody stays safe and alive. All right, protecting your pipe. Yes, I know that's PEX, but nail plates are required. This one here, that was an IT guy who was trying to hang a big screen TV and wondered why he got water out. So that happens. Okay, here's the notification, and it's clearly written on the side of the pipe. And that's where the problem is. You cannot have those wires come in contact with you. As you're walking through your job sites, I don't have it with me this time. As you're walking through your job sites, make sure to look at all of the piping that they're putting together. Oh, I did include a picture of it. Good. That'll be the next slide. Look at the piping that they're putting in, because if you walk up there and you see something like this, automatically that's a fail. Sprinkler manufacturers will not, number one, stand behind any heads that are not installed on the pipe in the air, because they're subject to damage. You damage a sprinkler head, it prematurely discharges, and that gives a bad image, along with a lot of damage. We had one in particular, a sprinkler head discharged above a $1 million auto pick system that had just got installed with a 1,200 gallon permanent pump on a Saturday evening. It was $990,000 worth of damage. So that's a lot to eat. Okay, so anyway, that's just part of the problem. The other part of the problem, see that little dangle right there? If they're gluing them with the sprinkler head in it, where's that glue go when they're pushing it together? It goes right into my sprinkler head and it keeps it from activating. If I see that, I make sure that I watch them throw all of those into the dumpster. Okay? I don't take them with me, even though it's brass. I don't get a lot of scrap anymore, guys. It's kind of nice. So, as I was saying, walk through your site. See this little gouge right here? Anybody knows what MC is? If you see electricians, that's that metal clad wire that they pull. It's like a flexible conduit. He was using my sprinkler pipe for a pull point. What's the problem? You think it might be a problem? So, he was an apprentice, he learned. Okay, we all learn. So, this is an example of what not to do. Again, these are already pre-made on the floor. You see that right there? That's a fail. They must remove them. Jack T's have to be drilled at cookie when they drill a pipe. It has to be on the exterior of it. Must be. Why? Because if it's not, it's inside the pipe. Oh, I took them all out. Yeah, bite me. Sorry. I actually have caught multiple contractors that have told me that. Now, granted, it wasn't the company, it was the installer, and he didn't remove them. How do we find it out? Because when this one in particular, he had pumped it with air. When I had him release the air so that we could fill it with water and check the flow switch, I hear tee-tee-tee-tee-tee-tee. Oh, what is that? Oh, it must be slag in the pipe. I'm looking at him like, you don't have a welded joint on this pipe. We're taking it apart. There was a half a dozen cookies inside the pipe. Okay, so now every time, if they don't, by code, you can make them disassemble this and look in the pipe. You tell me, you do that once or twice, are they ever gonna do it again? Probably not. All right, this one here is why that's there, because this got sent to me by a contractor saying, what?
Way in the back.
Way in the back. What's the code section for that? I've been enforcing it for 20-some years. It's not spouted out. It is in, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. It is in the code. It is in the, it's in NFPA 13 under systems. Boy, that's a good one. I haven't had to look that up.
If anybody can find it, I'd sure like to know.
Yeah, it would be under, I was calling them Jack T's for so long, I forgot the actual name of them in the code. Let me think on that and I will get back with you, okay? So, like I said, doing this too long, some things are just like muscle memory. All right, that one there, that came out of our hospital downtown. Contractor was, they were remodeling the space and he took the piping down and he found out that they never cut the hole. Okay, anybody ever work in a hospital? You have to go through miles of paperwork to get the system shut down so you can tie in. They forgot. So that whole section of that building was unsuppressed. That is never acceptable.
Wow.
Does it happen? Yeah, it is. So you cut it and put a T in, I mean, anyway. So I throw this in because Blaze Master, and we do run a lot of black pipe, but in this particular building, that's the sprinkler, that's the hydronic heating. Always make sure you're looking at the right piping. I know you're mechanical and plumbing guys, but just to be clear. Okay, sprinkler basics. We're gonna get into that, help you to understand how things should work in a wet system. Basically what it is you got a clapper or a check valve, water here, water on that side. It's city system pressure on both sides. Unless the pumps pump up the system, then the clapper closes and the gauge on the top side will be higher than the gauge on the bottom side because of that check valve. Okay, they're supposed to be inspected every year to make sure that check valve functions. A dry system, which has a lot of extra junk on it for a lot of reasons, is wet down here, dry up here. The gauges on the top and the bottom will be at different pressures. So a 65-pound city pressure, on the top side, the air pressure will be about 30. On newer valves, it can go down to 20. Okay, and all that is it's a hydraulic calculation, spread out the force over its distance, blah, blah. We can get into that in future class. I don't want to eat up too much of your time. How are we doing on time, by the way? Anybody know? Okay, I don't, I do tend to ramble, so.
Almost 11:30.
Almost 11:30, okay, and everybody's getting hungry. Okay, the different temperature ranges for sprinkler heads. This is the expected temperature for the area, not the sprinkler head temperature itself. That head is 165, but the average temperature is 100 degrees. So if you have an area like a mechanical room, you need to go with an intermittent sprinkler head. Okay? That's the middle range here. Pendant sprinkler heads. Let me get a drink so I can talk clearer. Much better. Okay, the deflector. Some distance from the deflector. If a fixed deflector is 1 inch from the ceiling, they can be down as far as 4 inches from the ceiling on 13-hour systems. They need to be at least 4 inches from a wall or a bulkhead. Now, on concealed ones, concealed sprinkler heads, I always tell you to get the manufacturer data sheet because it'll tell you, and sometimes you have to do a little bit of math. Okay, they'll tell you what the expected depth of this is going to be. This one here actually spells out your minimum clearance from the deck to the deflector. There are some sprinkler heads where that deflector depth is 1/8 of an inch. Most of them are 1/2 to 1 inch. So, and last I checked, there was over 1,000 different sprinkler heads. I don't know them all. That's why I get the data sheet. In your data sheet, it'll tell you how far specialty heads like this should be. Look just like this. It's a specialty type cover. Seeing as how we're at this point, let's talk about covers. We have 2 different styles. This is the fancy concealed type. On it is printed embossed, do not paint. Why? Paint insulates it. And on the back side of this, you'll notice there's 3 points on it. Those 3 points are soldered with 135 degree solder. Yes, that is tested at NFPA, NUL, and FM for approval at 135 degrees of temperature. That solder lets go. That little spring you've seen just drop, caught in the carpet. This little spring right here will assist that cover from dropping off. It will then expose the sprinkler head below it or above it and expose it to the heating element here, which you've seen in the last slide. Smoke does not, no matter what Hollywood tries to tell you, smoke does not activate sprinkler heads. Unless the smoke is 165 degrees or hotter, then it's called a fire. Okay? So, if you're, okay, fun story. I walked into a condo building and in the entryway, it was just a grand entryway, went up 3 stories, so it was an atrium. And the owner was kind of bored with it, so he paid somebody to paint clouds. And I walked in while the artist was finishing up. Sorry, I ruin people's days a lot. But
So now you got white spots in their clouds.
well, luckily, we're close to Viking, so they sent them out to Viking to get them painted and approved. They didn't quite match, but they came close. So, yes, they can be painted, they can be custom painted, but you have to send them back to the manufacturer. The manufacturer will certify that they still function at that temperature. All right, in the data sheet, like I showed you before, that's a concealed head. Are you guys familiar with concealed sprinkler heads? I'm used to working with a lapel mic, so I can play with all my toys. That's what it does. That cover drops down, this drops down, that's your deflector. There's a fusible link right in here. There's a fusible link right inside. And this one is, okay, my eyes are rolled, looks like 205. At 205 degrees, the fusible link lets go, bar comes out, hits the deflector, and designs to the pattern on this head. And they are strictly tested to distribute water in set patterns throughout the coverage area. If anybody has a chance to go to Viking in Hastings, they will show you this, and it is awesome to see it because it actually works. They set up 1 square foot containment, well, basically trash can, 1 square foot trash cans throughout the coverage area, and they have to have, with the head active, it has to have the same amount of water in each of those. So that's where coverage and obstructions are very important to make sure you are clear of. because we need consistent coverage of water across the entire area. Okay, here's the concealed one I was talking about, 135, it drops off, there's a sidewall. Sidewalls have their own specialty. All sprinkler heads have to have a discussion around them. The maximum opening around a sprinkler head is 1/8 of an inch. That's why when you see the concealed head cover, there's a little gap right there, that 1/8 of an inch, that allows the heat to get in here to activate the solder and the head. However, when you don't have that situation, you have something like this, a maximum distance between the head escutcheon or the head itself is 1/8 of an inch. You don't want the heat going past it, you want the heat activating it. Okay? Sidewalls, they have their own rules, 4 to 6 inches down from the ceiling. They must be pitched to the angle of the ceiling. So if you got a pitched ceiling, it has to be the same degree for the proper coverage. Uprights, you won't see too much in 13D systems, but you can. They have a maximum clearance from the ceiling of 1 inch to 12 inches, whereas in commercial, they can go down to 18 inches. Once again, we're trying to protect that occupant by knocking down the products of combustion as high as we can. There are specialty designs that have to come into play when you have areas like this. That should be designed by an engineer. These heads cannot be closer than 8 feet apart. And just another fun fact, sometimes you will get into a situation where sprinkler heads have to be 2 in a room. The closest they can be, not in this setup, the closest they can be on a smooth ceiling is 6 feet. They cannot be closer than 6 feet. They can be more than 6 feet. I have sprinkler heads that spray out 25 feet. So that means in between the 2 sprinkler heads, you have 25 feet of clearance. You also have to take into account your continuous and non-continuous obstructions when you're looking at sprinkler pattern. Now that you know how a sprinkler is supposed to work, you can start making these judgments on the field. We'll talk about that a little bit. That's a design challenge right there, dude. Okay, a pendant, you gotta have at least 3 feet away from that fan. And a sidewall, you have to have 5 feet away from that fan. That's a tough one. So, what ended up happening is they put a head here and they put a head here. They were more than 8 feet apart, so the 6-foot rule didn't come into play. It ended up working out for them. Okay, bulkheads, you gotta be able to get the water spray. Remember, we wanna spray this section of the ceiling. So there's a chart in your 13D and 13R and 13 about obstructions based on the sprinkler head. Quick response, standard response, pendant, sidewall. Okay, so get in your code and get familiar with it because there's ways to get around this. Because what happens with that water pattern, as you've seen from all the way back, right there, you see how it trails off. Okay, you want to make sure that you get coverage in this range underneath that bulkhead. Now, that's an engineering decision, and I'm not saying be an engineer, but you can make field judgments based on your experience and knowledge. All right, so as we're covering the area, there's going to be naturally areas of shadow where the sprinkler head just doesn't get because there's a corner there. Is that allowed? Yes, it is. You get up to 15 square feet max.
Is that in 13 also?
That is in 13 also. 13 is the mother of the code, all the rest of them are the babies. So when you go into it, you have to, you guys know what the code's like, it's a freaking rabbit trail. You know, you're always bouncing around looking here and there and back and forth. So when you need something, it's in there, where it is, that's what you gotta do is find it. Okay, bathrooms under 55 square feet, under 13R and 13D do not need to be suppressed.
Go back one slide, that slide.
This one?
Sprinkling system typically are put in for the ducts. So you got an open ceiling, all steel construction, but it's required to be sprinklered under the building code for the use, height, and everything else. Right. So we got a sprinkler space, and that's fine. Now the duct system goes in. It's exposed spiral duct. It's about 8 inches away from the sprinkler heads, and the middle of the sprinkler head is right in the middle of the duct. Obstruction.
Could be. And I say that because I got a slide on.
Oh, do you? You
Oh,
got
yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't worry, I got you covered, man.
All right. Yeah, it is.
Okay, so everybody heard that question about spiral duct after coming in after sprinklers. We'll get to that. Closets under 24 square feet and less than 3 feet on one side. So in other words, if you walk in and it's 3 foot deep, you gotta have a sprinkler head. But not 3 foot long. That's where the 24 comes in. So what they usually, and believe it or not, I've had a couple contractors do this, they had an extra sheet of drywalls in the back of the closet just to make sure it's under 36 inches. Okay, you win. I mean, how many fires do we have in closets, really? I mean, in colleges, when they were growing in the room, I can understand that, but that was legal. So, all right, mechanical rooms, required to have a sprinkler system, not required to have a sprinkler unless over 400 square feet. But you have to take into obstructions, into consideration the obstructions and the closeness to heat. So you have to be 18 inches from the flue, 16 inches from the water heater, or sorry, 6 inches from the water heater, and 18 inches if it's outside or in that room, 18 inches away from heated duct. If the duct is insulated, it's not heated. So in most residentials, we don't have blind duct work. Okay, this I throw in because this is a dry sidewall. This is actually, yeah, that's a pendant, dry pendant, but that's a dry sidewall. Anybody familiar with dry sprinkler heads?
I've seen them.
Yeah, they work really good. There's a little check valve here, an assembly inside of it, and I don't think I brought that, but I have one that got discharged by a truck. Pulling into a parking ramp, and he really had a rack on the top. But those are designed for these areas to protect them. They also go into coolers, protect them. Once again, you gotta make sure of the clearances because that refrigeration unit is an obstruction.
Is that like a pre-charge thing for those? Is that how that-
Oh, I should talk a little bit about that. In between here and here is filled with nitrogen or dry air. Most of the time it's nitrogen because dry air is harder to come by. Nitrogen is easy. And that's all it is. What happens is when the head breaks, the nitrogen or dry air gets released and that cap on the end is being held back by pressure. Now let's go, and it's spring mounted to fling out of the way so that we get a full flow of water coming in. When they do install these, and I probably should have put a picture in, this must go into the side or the straight through of a T. And then they pipe into the side and put a plug on the top. Why? Because this is so deep it will obstruct the water flow otherwise. It cannot go into a 90. It has to go into a T, into the straight side of the T, not the full side.
So you're saying it can't go on the branch side of the T,
It cannot,
just on the run side.
just in the run side. You can feed the water to the run side or the side, or, yeah. You can put the water on either side, but it must go into a T into the straight through. All right, so you see a sidewall that looks like this, that is actually beeswax to keep it from corroding. Why do they put it on there? To keep it from corroding. Do they work? You see this head is actually pulled away from the wall because they were about to replace it because that grill right there caught fire. And that's on the other side. The sprinkler head that you just looked at was on this side of the deck. That fire was put out within 30 seconds of the fire. They work. Why do we put them in freezers? Because it's a cold storage. It's a storage room that has refrigeration. And now it's a storage room. Okay, obstructions. We talked about deflectors. This is the actual deflector that's an 1/8 inch clearance from the deck. You see how the deflector is bent down? That's the only way I can tell that that's that, unless I look up the data, which I would always ask for. That is unacceptable. That's unacceptable, and so is that. How do they adjust that?
Channel locks.
Oh, right there. Channel locks, lowering the rod, or putting on one of these specialty fittings. They come in 1/2 and 3/4 inch length, and they're UL certified, NFPA approved to put on there and extend it down. Most of the time, you'll get it extended down 1/2 inch so that you get your deflector height.
What I do, we look at.
My remote. Oh. So much technology, guys. Okay, so there are the adapters I just showed you about, but this right here, I wanted to point out, I went through this building. It was in a cafeteria. They found out there was too much noise in the cafeteria. So they put this up. Oops. So now they have to extend them down and put a 401 on there, which is just an extension. It's a decorative extension, looks nice.
Question,
Yes, sir.
back one slide. So you're saying all those are not acceptable the way they are?
This one is the only one in this whole thing that is acceptable because of that 1/8" design clearance that has.
Those deflectors have to be down a minimum of an 1/8 below the drywall.
This one only. This one here has to be down 1/2 inch, that one there had to be down 1 1/4 inches, and this one was supposed to be down 3/4 inch. And that's at full extension right now with the escutcheon and decorative ring off of it. So that's why I walk through every job site. My boss has been very, very, very kind with letting me hit job sites often. I mean, they only pay for 2 inspections, but I will stop by big, projects weekly. Right now I have 2 high rises and a very large building office complex going up that, I'm stopped by weekly. What do you got here?
Just a heads up, if no one's seen it, there's a new decorative craze going around, taking ceiling tiles out, leaving the grid in. Particularly a couple of hair salons that we saw recently. There's no mechanical permit often, the ducts aren't changing. So you're not out there, but usually the electricians are. Let the electrical inspector know if you see something like that. We just changed the ceiling height. You've got pendants hanging down the level of the grid, and now suddenly you've got 2 feet or more over the top of this thing, which will delay the activation of those sprinklers. There's a maximum distance from the ceiling. So have your building and electrical inspectors let you know if they see something like that, so you can lay eyes on it.
Always communicate with the other inspectors. I have a very good working relationship with the entire inspection department in Grand Rapids, and I get calls from other departments about things too, and I call those departments when I see them in their area. So it's important that we communicate, and really, what's the end game? We're saving lives. We got the greatest job in the world. We save lives every day just by doing our jobs, but they never know it. But at least you can go to bed at night thinking, you know what, I did a good job today. Okay, other obstruction, always look around. First of all, the integrity of the ceiling has to be there, otherwise all that heat's gonna go right out that hole. Spray foam, go for minutes. Walk the job site, look for the obstructions, because they're there. There's your spiral. Okay? Whoever was asking me about a spiral pipe blocking it, that right there, if it was over another 2 inches, as per NFPA and the manufacturer, would work with it being in the middle of that 6-inch pipe.
So what's the dimension from the pipe to the sprinkler head? What does it have to be?
It would have to been 18 inches away from it.
And it doesn't make any difference in diameter of that spiral?
It does. This one's a 6-inch. This is where I say get with your manufacturer, because they do have, it's called a wraparound effect of water. Okay, so in this one, it wraps around better when it's going vertically than it does horizontally. Horizontally, it's gotta be further away. Vertically, on some heads, and depending upon the size of the pipe, it can be up to 4 inches away.
And if that head is not right in the center of the spiral duct, at what point in time do you believe that the spray of the head is gonna be over top of the duct? Does it have to be then above the top of the duct?
It does not have to be if that head is less than 18 inches down.
Yeah.
This beam right here
Yeah.
brought it down to a point where they would have to have a head on both sides.
Yeah.
That beam, I think, was like 14 inches. I don't really remember, it's been a while since I did that one. But to answer your question, that depends. Remember that chart I showed you with the sprinkler head that showed you the spray pattern?
Well, we have similar to that, except, you know, the beams are concrete beams, and it's a concrete deck above. You got a spiral duct, and it starts out, I think think 18 inch, and then as it goes along, it drops to 12 inch, and then it drops to 8 inch, and then it drops to 6 inch.
The supply pipe,
There's
yeah.
that whole line of sprinkler heads right along that.
Yeah, they're gonna have to go above that.
Yeah.
Or, well, they can't go below it because it's more than 8 inches down.
Right.
So they're stuck putting them above it. That's where working together with all the contractors comes in handy. I got a good working relationship with even the contractors. They're calling me going, hey, did you see this over here? You know, it's a great thing. It makes my job a whole lot easier. So I seen a hand up somewhere.
Right here. What's the warning on the? On upright sprinkler heads, the frame that holds the deflector, is that frame supposed to be parallel with the pipe? Okay, because I noticed I'm always constantly writing it out. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the arms on the sprinkler head must go with the pipe. That causes a deflection in the pattern, and the pipe is a deflection in the pattern itself, and because of their listing, they're designed to go parallel to the pipe. They're perpendicular, now you got two separations of the pattern, and it must be correct. And yes, that's in 13, and it's also in UL, and actually Viking, Tyco, and one of the manufacturers both put out a data sheet on that about almost 2 decades ago. Getting old. Okay, so, yes, sir.
Can you tell me ultimately who is responsible for inspecting fire suppression systems? Is it mechanical, is it a fire marshal, is it,
Yes.
who is technically responsible for inspecting fire suppression, what parts? Where do we walk through that?
And that's a very good question that caused me to get all of the certifications that I have. Because sprinkler systems are actually covered under the building code. You have a limited amount of sprinkler code sections in your code. However, the jurisdiction you're in can dictate or mandate or give you the authority to inspect those under the building code with the building official or the fire code official if they are certified. The reason I have all those certifications is because 20 years ago, Henry Green, everybody remember him? Oh, yeah. He came to our conference one day and he says, you know what you gotta be to a fire inspector? IR1. And then he walked off the stage.
That sounds like, yeah.
I'm like, dude, that is so rude. So we took that to heart and most of us are fully certified in everything and plans and examiners now and all that. So it's Henry Green. But to answer your question, that depends on your jurisdiction, who was given that authority. So everything 13R is covered in the building code. By reference, you have limited references in there. You got references to NFPA 20, which is fire pumps. Okay, which also comes along in 24, and then the plumbing code is also 24. So there's a lot of interconnections. Look at the back of your book, and it'll tell you what all you can cover without special permission. But I say that partly because that's how legally it lays out. But if you see something and you don't say something, you're still liable. You know, we're all gonna get thrown under the bus at some point if we don't say something about something we see.
Besides it's processed pipe.
I'm sorry?
I say besides it's processed pipe, it just comes under the mechanical.
Correct. In some ways it does, but I've gotten in arguments with that one before with our previous mechanical inspector. But it was only in jest, because that's how he was. So, yes, sir.
Which license to install 13R systems? What license do you need to have for a 13R system?
You have to have a mechanical class 9.
Wow. The homeowner do it?
What?
He said, wow.
Oh. You have to have a mechanical class 9, and now, sorry. I woke you up, sorry. And now you have to be NICET certified. The state is getting more stringent on those things, which I completely agree with. Because the higher we raise the standard, the better the quality we're gonna get. And when it's a life safety system, that's why they're called life safety systems, they save lives. Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Who can install a 13D system?
Who can install a 13D system? A plumber with a class 9. Godwin Plumbing, in my area. Yes, that's a mechanical license with a plumber.
So that would never happen.
Well, we have a couple of contractors that I've heard are, I know Godwin has that whole certification.
Is it not a standalone, you have to have a class 9? But if it's a multi-purpose, you have to be a plumber with a class 9. But a standalone system can be a mechanical fire suppression company, correct?
That is correct. If it's a standalone system, that's the sprinkler system. The reason you have to have a class 9 with multi-purpose because it's domestic water. However, your class 9 does not give you the authority to check your RPZ unless you're certified. Which I let mine lapse, sorry. Actually, I do regret that. You make a lot of money checking them things, man.
Is there a certain, how far you wanna get in your program, because it's like 5 minutes to 12.
Let me see how many slides I got left. I got 6 slides left. So if you guys are okay with it, I'll finish it off. Is it good so far?
Yeah.
Good.
Keep going.
Okay, moving on now. Walk your site always. You see this? That's that same light. Sparky. And dude, just keep your eyes open. You'll see things. Okay. Always look around. That is a sidewall sprinkler head. This is actually a residential sidewall sprinkler head, which will shoot across the room 25 feet. That's the fusible link. That metal plate there drops out, and then the deflector comes out with the pressure of the water. Okay, this is not allowed. That's that deflector that I showed you that drops down. That's clearly not going to do anything but spray water above the ceiling. Painters like to cop gaps. That gap I need. Plus, it wouldn't let the cover drop off. Okay, fire caulking is important, but okay, lightweight concrete. You guys are familiar with lightweight concrete? You see that picture right there? This is a sprinkler head. Yeah, that's lightweight concrete. It's in the back of a mechanical closet. I liked it so much I wanted to have it. I like props. So it does happen. Check every head, no matter how difficult it is. You got a cell phone on you. I many times have taken the camera and went back, snapped a picture, and took a look. Okay, that's a construction cover. Grab it with your dog, give it a twist, pulls off. Sprinkler head should be there, should be clean. No paint is allowed. They are not allowed to clean paint off sprinkler heads, period. The only thing you clean off a sprinkler head is drywall dust. Drywall dust. Yeah, just that. Blow it off. Don't hit it with a rag. Okay, so we're just about done. So I will say, be careful when you're on your job sites because where you park is important. This is my car. He was backing in with, Mr. Summer help there. Backed into my car. And he thought he was cool because it was on private property. That's a city vehicle.
Oops.
That won't go on my record. And then the cop pulls it and he goes, I don't know if it went on his record or not, but, be safe out there. Okay, that concludes this story. Any questions?
Thanks a lot. All right, we got a Yeti cooler.